At 5 Eyewitness News, you told us that fraud and wasted money are important to you, and that's why we're going after it. I'm Kevin Dorn, and every day 5 Eyewitness News is following the money in your neighborhood, asking the tough questions, looking out for you, and uncovering fraud with your tax dollars. We're listening, and we're working hard to protect your money. Watch and see the difference on 5 Eyewitness News.
You should tell the people who we are and what our new show is.
I'm Robert Smith, and this is Jacob Goldstein, and we used to host a show called Planet Money.
And now we're back making this new podcast about the best ideas and people and businesses in history.
And some of the worst people, horrible ideas, and destructive companies in the history of business. We struggled to come up with a name, decided to call it Business History.
You know why?
Why?
Because it's a show about the history of business. Available everywhere you get your podcasts.
Come on.
The movie A Clockwork Orange has become our new reality. We live in a dystopian nightmare rife with ultra-violence, don't we, Jay?
Yeah, we do. And this one, Kenny, took a whole turn for me. And I'm kind of excited to have our guest in here to talk about it. But
this is exciting, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's exciting and weird and frightening all at the same time. Joining us today is two-time Minnesota US Attorney Andy Luger. I got that right. It's 2 times, right, Andy?
You were twice. It was only 2 times.
Only 2 times.
It feels like more to some people.
And you know what? Others have forgotten that you ran for governor at one time, too.
County attorney.
County attorney. So see, Andy's been around forever. We've both been around forever.
Wait, how did you get governor out of county attorney?
I'm 65 now.
Okay.
But Andy wrote a fascinating op-ed piece in the Star Tribune, which I passed along to Kenny, passed along to the newsroom. There's a lot of interest in it. And before I get into exactly what the definition of it is, Andy, I'm going to say what it is. You basically presented this as a new violent extremism emerging in Minnesota that could be equally as troublesome as ideological violent extremism. Let me start with this. It's called nihilist violent extremists, correct?
Correct.
NVE. Sum up, what is nihilist violent extremism? What is it?
So the easiest way to explain it is to start with ideological violent extremism, which most of us, if we think about this topic, are familiar with. And that's how I started off learning about violent extremism. ISIS terror recruiting, which we experienced in Minnesota a couple of times, is sort of quintessential ideological violent extremism, where somebody is recruited to join a group because of a belief system, a belief that, for ISIS, radical Islam and blame the West and, jihad and all of those terms. You've got to kind of go along with the belief system. You've got to ascribe to the belief system to join the movement, for lack of a better term. Same thing is true with your typical hate crimes. They're often, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, you name it down the line, racist. Somebody wants to kill people because the world will be better without that group of people, name whoever you want, in there. That's all ideological extremism.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Let me interrupt you real quick. Would the Annunciation Church mass murder be considered ideological?
So everybody's trying to figure that out, and I'm not there yet because I'm not an expert. I'm watching the experts work. There are experts who are looking at the Annunciation Church shooting in line with some other church and school shootings and thinking that it might fit into nihilistic. Nihilistic violent extremism is a relatively recent development and incredibly frightening because it is not about a belief system of how we make the world better. It's not about a belief system that says, as twisted as these ideologies are, they're at least an ideology that you can try to get people out of. You can talk them out of hating Jews, blacks, gay, you name it. Here, it's a sort of a despondent despair that there's nothing worth believing in this world. There is no way to improve society. We just want to hurt, harm, and destroy, and actually take joy out of that. To the extent that people who ascribe to this NVE subculture, find anything worthwhile, it's hurting other people indiscriminately, regardless of who they are. And that's the new development that I and many others who are tracking this find so disturbing and frightening. And it's sort of beginning to creep up in some of the shootings, but also in other types of crimes that are being prosecuted right now.
Because I was looking at enunciation as an example of maybe ideological, but you're telling me right now that has not been determined, and it could actually be NVE, what we're talking about today.
Yeah, if you were, and most people won't, but if you were interested in pursuing this further and you wanted to, you could type in NVE and enunciation shooting. And what you'll get is a little bit of a debate by those who study this stuff. And so it's like anything else. There's a small group of people, very dedicated, hardworking, I've known them for over 10 years, of people who track developments in extremism and extremist violence. And they do it in a non-political way. This is not, looking at the left or the right. This is just looking at what's happening. And I met a bunch of these folks when I started doing this work relating to ISIS in 2014. They have their own debates, and they're online. They've got their own publications, their own alerts, and they're debating how, where everything falls. But there are at least some people who believe the enunciation shooting kind of falls into that category.
Interesting. It is simply killing and harming for the sake of killing and harming. Is that oversimplifying it?
It isn't. The only thing I would add, Jay, is if there are 3 sites that I mention in my op-ed, and I don't recommend that anybody go there or try to follow this. People do that for a living. One is called Watch People Die. And the essence of Watch People Die is the followers to this site post videos of mass murders, of horrendous crimes, crimes against animal abuse and torture, and that's where people get their joy. So Watch People Die is literally that. There's another one, we have Black Lives Matter. There's one called No Lives Matter. And it stands for exactly that. People who ascribe, and not everybody who goes on a site ascribes to everything, but their point is nobody matters. So let's watch people get harmed. The one that sort of started this all, and it's been in the news a little bit, you can Google this one too, because it's a little bit better known, is called 764. 764, and the Washington Post has just done a big article a couple weeks ago about 764. They basically are sextortionists and other child predators and more, but mostly that, where they encourage other people to take a vulnerable 12, 13-year-old and get them to commit self-harm on video so that they can then post it. And in fact, some suicides as well. The ultimate goal is to get somebody to commit suicide online by befriending them and getting them into your orbit, and then saying, I'm going to commit suicide. Why don't you do it with me, when the person who's on 764 isn't really going to do that? And we have some horrendous cases, one of which the Washington Post just highlighted, where that's the crime. I mean, that's the activity, is to convince somebody, generally young, vulnerable adult, also often girls, but boys as well, to commit self-harm online. And just in case anybody thinks, well, all right, this is awful, but it's a tiny, tiny percentage of people. It is, but a tiny percentage of people could be millions. So there are, when one person posted on Watch People Die what they claim to be every single known video of a mass murder, it got 300,000 hits.
Wow.
So this isn't like a couple of kids sitting. Yeah, this isn't a couple of kids sitting in the basement. And again, nobody wants to raise alarms where they're not needed. But what the concern is from people who track this for a living, I'm just watching them, is this could grow. And, now the kid in middle school who's kind of lost or troubled or, struggling with where they fit in, they have another place to go that I'll dare say when you and I and Kenny were growing up, we didn't have that. So people who were lost, and hopefully they came back and they found their way and they found a measure of a community in the school or in the town. This is an alternative, and it's apparently attractive to a number of people.
And the closest we had before the internet was on VHS, and were a series of videos called Faces of Death. But if I remember right, that was all accidental death. It wasn't suicide or encouraged death. So the internet really, really opened this up, did it not?
It did. And what I often say when I talk about this, and it's, this is a tough topic. It's not fun to talk about, but I do believe we need to know about it. One of the reasons I wrote my piece is just to get it out there, because I would go to gatherings, dinner parties, what have you, and talk a little bit about this because you don't want to kill the mood all the time. And I, in all of the months that I was sort of tracking this before I wrote my piece, I found one person who actually knew about this.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it until your op-ed piece, and
you're in the majority.
But it's interesting when you're in the news business, right? You hear so much, a lot of stuff you don't report. This was new to me, and I started thinking about Vance Belter. He's accused of murdering Melissa Hortman and her husband. I'm thinking political ideology. I was even thinking Annunciation Church, some of the things we can relate to recently. But this to me seemed like this whole new area, Andy, where if this is actually happening, I have no doubt to believe it is, how do you get your arms around it? It's good that we're talking about it so people are aware, but what is it that law enforcement can do? And you're talking about young kids being motivated by this stuff and influenced by this stuff. What do parents do? I mean, how do you get your arms around it? What is the solution? Or because it's in the internet, Andy, good luck.
Well, I'm not ready to say good luck. What I try to do when I encounter, whether as a prosecutor, as a lawyer, or as just a citizen, counter something that seems difficult or insurmountable, I try to figure out what can be done. I'm not in the, and I'm not suggesting you are, but I'm not in the camp of saying there's nothing we can do. So the first reason I wrote the piece that I wrote was to sort of get this out there so people know about it, and at least have it in their head. And the second was to inspire or start some conversation with people who actually do have ideas about how to deal with this. And they're out there. And I've gotten a lot of responses to my piece. So what I'm working on now is convening a group of people in the public health sphere, educators, others, maybe even in child psychology, psychiatry, to talk about what can be done, including people in the tech sphere who may have ideas. We're not going to censor our way out of this, as far as I can tell, but there are things, I believe, that social media sites can do, perhaps, and they would argue they already are. I just think we got to get a bunch of people in a room. I'm looking at doing that. I've got various people interested. So taking it to the next level. One is recognizing the problem, identifying it, defining it as best you can. Second is now what do we do about it? And I would say over the next couple of weeks, I have a series of phone calls with people who know a lot more than I do. And I'm just asking them, what are your ideas, priorities for how we deal with this. Law enforcement is one, but we have nowhere near enough law enforcement, and we won't, to deal with something like this, nor is it just a law enforcement problem.
So have you talked to healthcare professionals, and after your piece, what kind of feedback did you get in terms of solutions? Can you share some of those? What are they?
Yeah, I don't, what I have are what I'll call the beginnings of ideas, Jay.
Okay.
And some of them involve how do we, the biggest one, and again, if people are listening, I don't want them to think I know the answer, because I don't. I know some of the questions, not even them. But for example, educators, I have had this conversation with a lot of people in school administration, where I say, when I was US Attorney and we were talking about crimes against children online, which we prosecuted, I would say to teachers and educators, we can't be raising our kids in 2025 as though it's 1975, because it's not. And so there's more happening with our kids, and I'm not saying anything other people haven't said a million times. There's something happening with our kids that's beyond the school assembly, don't do drugs stuff that we used to get as kids. What's the version of that for social media? What's the version of the school assembly, don't do drugs? I get it. It's not a school assembly where Mrs. Jones, who you've heard 1,000 times telling you what not to do, says don't go on, watch people die online. I understand that. What is it, though? And how do we educate ourselves and our students and parents about this horrendous thing that's out there that has caused so much harm? A 12-year-old outside of Seattle who commits suicide because they were befriended by somebody on 764, and they're told this is our way out, and there's an online video that you can watch if you wanted to go online of a 12-year-old committing suicide. How do we get to those kids long before that is where they're at?
Speaking of that, is there a certain set of traits? It's a demographics question. Is there a trait that all of these kids share where you could identify who is at risk?
Sort of. What the parents say, and the Post did a really good exploratory, investigatory piece on this. What parents generally say, I didn't know, and I don't look. I'm a parent. I don't criticize anybody. I made every mistake under the sun, I would imagine, as a parent, as did my parents.
Yeah.
Somehow we lucked out. But a lot of parents say, I knew he was struggling with this or that. I had no idea it went to this level. And so one of the questions that people are trying to ask, Kenny, is how deep do these struggles have to be? Because in some of these cases that law enforcement and analysts are tracking, it's not that long between engaging in the social media site and then the actual self-harm.
Wow.
So this can happen quite quickly.
Yeah.
There's terminology for it, but I won't get too far in the weeds. But when we studied people being radicalized to join ISIS and wanting to go over and commit murder in the Middle East, we studied how long it took, and it seemed to be taking less time as the ideology progressed. That's something people are looking at.
Sorry, Andy. If you go to 764, No Lives Matter, Watch People Die, you go to any of these websites, and this is something for parents to pay attention to. You could possibly witness a 12-year-old being encouraged to die by suicide and then carrying out that act. It gets that graphic and is not censored or taken down. It's just there, Andy.
Yes.
Wow.
Now I haven't gone on these sites yet, in part because I've got a computer at work that's connected to a network, and I've got a computer at home that I don't want infected with all this stuff. But I am exploring, and I'm talking to the people who live, to analyze this stuff, my friends, the analysts and experts. So I'm going to get some separate computer. We did this, US Attorney's offices have this, and law enforcement has it, where you have something that's not connected to a network and it's separate, and you can, for example, for some of the awful stuff that we prosecuted, you need a computer where you can put that stuff. I'm looking to do that with these sites and others, so I can, actually report back to you, Jay, what I have seen, if to the extent that you ever want me back, and that's debatable. But if you did, I'm going to be able to tell you, look, I saw this, because I don't, for me, I need to see it with my very eyes. I've seen so many horrendous things in my career that I can deal with seeing this. I do not recommend it for most people.
How could law enforcement, and especially on your end, as a prosecutor, as a federal prosecutor, if you see that on this site called 764, that a 12-year-old is talked into dying by suicide, I'm assuming you'd be able to prosecute whoever did that, correct?
Yes, and that's what the Post article talks about, how sort of the detailed way that both local law enforcement, police and sheriffs in that town, as well as the FBI, how hard it was to figure out who this person was, where they were in the world, and the mechanisms that they used. That started a while ago. My sense is from a case that was just prosecuted the other day, that law enforcement's gotten better at this, which is pretty typical. Every time something new comes along, state, local, and federal law enforcement has to kind of like, okay, how are we going to do this? And I've got many examples, far less horrendous than this, but many examples of where you got to figure out what's the crime, how's it being committed, how do we investigate it, how do we find the person? If that person's overseas, how do we extradite them to the United States to face charges? Much more, and it's gotten more complicated for law enforcement because so much of this is online, and the people who do it are very good at masking where they are and who they are. But that's happened, Jay.
Yeah, well, that's good to know, because I do know with these computer crimes, it's very difficult to even track down who it is. With nihilist violent extremism, for those who might just be joining, we're talking with two-time U.S. Attorney Andy Luger for the Minnesota District about an op-ed piece he wrote in the Star Tribune, which was titled "An Emerging Extremism in Minnesota," and it is this NVE, nihilist violent extremism. Is it a greater threat to our public health and public safety, Andy, than ideological violence right now?
On balance, I would say yes, and here's why. I started off by saying if you want to join ISIS, you got to be sort of convinced of the ISIS ideology. And it takes a little time, and there's the whole recruiting process can take some time. Same thing is true of, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, you name it. You got to buy into something. And on the flip side, there's a way to get out. There are mechanisms to get out. People can convince you that, hating this group or that group isn't the answer. I'm not saying it's easy, but there are experts all over the world who do this, including people I've worked with locally. There are mechanisms that we've developed over a number of years of how to quote unquote de-radicalize somebody. This is different because you don't have to believe in anything. And so, yes, there's a pathway out, which is to try to inspire somebody that their lives and the world as we know it is not so bad, and there's a future for you. But it's a little more difficult, and there isn't an established protocol to the extent that there is on the ideological side, if that makes sense. So the concern is that this is easier for people to get into, harder to get them out of. And again, we've always had a community of people who felt despair, despondent, the world doesn't mean anything. I don't see any future. And now they have a subculture to join that not only grabs that, but then can take advantage of it.
So for parents who are listening, because I got to believe when you start talking about the 12-year-olds, 13, 14, if you're a parent listening to this, I guess the message is pay attention as best you can and check to see, are they going to 764, No Lives Matter, watch people die? I guess you got to be that snoopy as a parent, right? It seems pretty basic, but I guess that's what you do, right?
It starts, I think, and again, this is what I hope to learn, and then I can speak more intelligently about it. I think it starts with online culture for teens and preteens, where anybody who tries to befriend you online very well not may be who they say they are. And, if Joe down the street is talking to you and you know Joe and you see Joe every day in school and you can be clear that it's Joe that you're talking to, that's one thing. But somebody who contacts you online and says, hey, I saw you in school, you looked sad. I'd like to talk to you about it. I'm sad too. That's where you got to stop. Anybody who sort of reaches out and seems to know anything about you and wants to engage with you, and it's sextortion, it's child sex abuse, and it's self-harm. That's where you got to stop. Whether they're on 764 or they're a loner, because we prosecuted. That's the difference here. We prosecuted a lot of these cases when I was U.S. Attorney. They were one-offs. They weren't part of a broader subculture. There was the guy who was a predator and reached out and extorted online all sorts of high school and pre-high school kids. That guy now could be part of a larger network and has this sort of force and power of a whole subculture behind him.
It's the old pimp ploy where you become friends and support people with low self-esteem.
And so what the stories I'm reading say is exactly right. There's a lot of grooming. It's the sex trafficker who I prosecuted in 2015 who groomed people. You're so wonderful. Come with me. And then boom, you're locked into this life. Yep. It's just exponentially larger, Kenny, because now it's part. I mean, there's a whole network of people teaching each other how to do it. And you, as the person who wants to get somebody to engage in self-harm, you go through, young adult after young adult or preteen after preteen until you achieve your goal, because you're now competing essentially for credit at having caused a suicide. It's that blatant. And look, I get it. This is really hard stuff to talk about. It just seems like, if it's going to grow, then it's got to be part of the reality of raising a kid, educating kids, talking to each other about social media. It's not just, quote unquote, the dark web. It's right there.
Yeah. And it sounds, Andy, like it goes beyond suicide. That if it's No Lives Matter and watch people die, it's about murder, homicide, as well as suicide. Yeah,
it's chaos. That's their ideology. Yeah.
And if there's no ideology, but it almost sounds like, Andy, and maybe this is an oversimplification too, it sounds like the end of civilization is what they're after.
Yeah.
Is that too much?
No, Jay, here's what's happening with the experts. They're all digesting this, and analysts, and there is a caution against, and I do. The term nihilism means a lot, and you could reach the conclusion, as you just talked about, that the goal here is the destruction of civilization. For some people, that's the case. For a broader group of people, they're just not at that level. It's just, for them, it's just fun, for lack of a better term, to see torture and harm. They don't have a broader end goal of the destruction of civilization. They've never thought that far. They've never gone that far. And so there's a little debate back and forth between some of the people who write about this. It's like, don't assume everybody wants to see the end of the world, which is sort of the extreme version of this extremism. A lot of it is, and we talk about harm, I want to watch you torture animals. I want to watch you extort kids. I want to watch you do X. You do that, and I'm going to promote you as a hero on this site, where we're not talking about the end of the world. We're talking about what you can do to harm others, and it becomes a competition.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Didn't mean to bring the whole room down this morning with this conversation, but you're right, Andy. It's important to talk about because I knew nothing about it. Nothing about it. On the one hand, I'm talking to the people who track this closely, and soon I'll be able to watch it myself so I can report on what I've seen. But they're debating where this is going and how big this is. I will say that the FBI has publicly stated that they have investigations into people who are committing harm on 764 throughout the country. So there are investigations into 764 activity all across the United States. And most likely Minnesota then.
Yeah, I think we'll be hearing about some of that.
Good.
Well, we appreciate the time. I know you're busy, even though you're not U.S. Attorney anymore.
Yeah.
You're actually working for a living, huh?
I have a couple things to do, Jay, but I appreciate you and Kenny taking this seriously, and I can tell people, don't just believe what I wrote in the op-ed or what I'm saying. You can. National Public Radio, CBS, a couple of other networks have done mini exposés on this. So it's out there. Where it's going, how bad it will get if we don't act, I can't tell. But it seems like it's bad enough already.
Before I let you go, I did want to ask you one thing, since there was a historic moment, if you will, in New York City with the election. And I know you're from Brooklyn. Share some of your thoughts as someone who's from Brooklyn, prosecutor in Brooklyn, and what you see happen in New York City. What are your thoughts on that? I'm just curious.
So politically, I'm a moderate Democrat. I'm a pro-law enforcement prosecutor Democrat who believes in many of the values of the Democratic Party. I think the Democratic Party writ large has really failed. When I look at somebody winning the mayor's race in New York who I don't agree with, I don't get disappointed or mad or blame the voters. I look inward, and to me there was a real failing here for moderate Democrats, certainly for those who are pro-Israel like I am, critical of Israel but pro-Israel, critical of the Israeli government, but pro-Israel, that nobody could get around a candidate who was inspiring and exciting. And this guy is, put aside his ideology and things he's said that I don't agree with or that I find troubling, he excited people. That's a big part of the game. You got to excite the voters and get them interested in voting for you. And so whenever I'm sitting around a table or in a conversation with people, as I was last night, and they're pounding the table about how terrible, you got to get out and get people to vote for who you want, which means identifying candidates and rallying that middle where I think most of us really are. So take everything as a lesson, learn from it, do better, and stop blaming everybody else.
Thanks, Andy. It's always good. Always good.
Thanks.
And I didn't know you played
Thanks
football.
for having me.
I didn't know you played football in college. We got to talk about that someday.
Anytime you want, Jay. I got lots of stories, and some of them are good, and some of them not so much.
Usually they're pretty good. There he is, Andy Luger, two-time U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota. If you haven't read his op-ed piece, I encourage you to do so. You're obviously going to be listening to this and watching this. Nihilist, violent, extremist. It's a fascinating topic. I wish, like you said, it's not the most fun thing to talk about, but it is pretty important, and we do appreciate all your time. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks.
We'll see you soon.
We'll take a break and be right back. So, Coles, one of the things I've noticed, I've kind of become obsessed with this topic over the last week, and I've been reading a lot about it. And it seems like the umbrella heading of NVE is kind of expanding, and I'm seeing all sorts of different categories of things kind of being slipped under that umbrella. Like, for instance, the Trump shooting when he was in Pennsylvania on the stump. Mm-hmm. They're trying to call that
NVE.
NVE. And you brought up enunciation, and what immediately popped to mind, and I wish I could remember where I read it, but these folks, and if you remember enunciation, it wasn't even 12 noon, and both parties were arguing with each other. Yep. It turned political instantly. Yep. When maybe some of these NVE things aren't political, they're just done for the sake of chaos or for murder, right? They love it when we get to arguing with each other because that represents chaos. They love chaos.
When I was talking to Andy on the phone, after I read his piece, I called him and we had a long chat, a couple of chats actually. Yeah. Because I was trying to really understand the distinction, the true distinction between, because I could argue enunciation is ideological.
Right, absolutely.
And Andy said sometimes it's a very subtle thing, and he's very good to say, look, I'm not an expert in that. That's why I hire experts like that to figure that out. But to your point, the chaos part, that when I was talking to Andy on the phone, that's also a part of this.
Yeah.
They're so disillusioned that they truly don't care if everybody's wiped out, and they would like to watch everybody being wiped out, and they love the chaos that they're creating. To a certain extent, they love the attention interviews like this are going to give them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Andy mentioned the Washington Post has done some on this. I'm going to go find out what the Post did on it. Because when I talked to Andy on the phone, and he alluded to it today, so I'm not speaking out of school, I asked him on the phone, and I asked him here, is this a greater threat than an ideological nut job, that might join ISIS or a white supremacist group? And you heard him say he thinks this is a greater threat. Because it's easier to join, harder to get out of, harder to identify, all the things that law enforcement and social workers and healthcare workers, they can't do, right? Yeah. So, and he did mention the chaos. They like the chaos. They like the fact that we're bothered by it, that this upsets us, and we're talking about it. But the flip side, Andy said, is if we don't talk about it, we play into their hands worse. Right?
Yeah, either way.
Yeah. And he said, doing a show like this with you and Kenny, TV show. I'm sure he's done other interviews. I don't know. He said, look, parents especially, you got a kid 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. You got to know about this. And they can access the. So, Andy's like, even though we know talking about it is going to make these crazy groups happy somewhat, Andy's like, well, the flip side is to not talk about it would be even worse. So
he alluded to something, and my hat's off to you. You're this kind of a jackass, typical reporter that can squeeze information out of people that don't want to give information. And that's what I love about you.
Yeah, thanks. Sometimes.
He alluded to the fact that we here in Minnesota might be hearing something soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I could tell you this, based on how he answered that question when he said, look, that's happening all over the country. So right away, I'm going, okay, here in Minnesota, the FBI is investigating 7-6. And right away, he didn't want to say yes.
Yeah.
But he knows.
Yeah.
And that's why
of course he does.
So he said he threw us a nugget there.
Yeah.
To say, you're probably going to see some type of indictment in an NVE case coming out of the FBI here, the local FBI, not DC, not the headquarters. So, Andy's a great guy, and I would say to people, is Andy, Andy's a two-time US attorney. 2 different presidents, under Trump, under Biden, under Obama, actually 3 different presidents. I think he only lapped over with Trump shortly. But point being, he's not a wingnut.
Right.
Andy's a rational, reasonable guy. And for Andy to write that op-ed piece and then to talk to us and probably, I'm sure, doing other interviews, I take it as this has got to be it's something, and it's something we should be paying attention to, because I had never heard of it as a reporter, and you would think I would have heard maybe something about it. So, to Andy's credit, he's, out there talking about it. Like he said, this isn't particularly fun to talk about. And you and I have a lot of fun when we talk about stuff. But at some point, you also have to pick out stuff that just people should know, right? They just should know. And so I thought it was good that we talked to him.
He doesn't realize this, but this interview with me being involved might be a career low point for him. Definitely a career high point for me, but no. he doesn't know that yesterday on Garage Logic, I bragged about picking up coyote poop and checking it out and moving it to a better location.
If I had to guess, knowing Andy, he already knew a lot about you.
Jay, I want to really, really switch gears hard. We're going to downshift. We're going to spool it up and change gears here before we leave. We're going to take a quick one, and we'll be right back.
All right.
Okay, so here we are back again already. It seems like that break was only 2 seconds long.
Didn't it, though?
Are you still doing deer camp? Are you still a deer hunter?
Yes and no. So... Yes. So now I'm closer to the guys, so it'll be even easier. Yeah. I wussed out a little bit. If the temperatures weren't favorable, because we go a little bit later in Wisconsin than you.
Right. Yeah.
If there's a wind chill of below 0 or 10 degrees, Kenny, no.
What about your son? Is he a deer hunter?
He's got 20 acres, on this farm in Ellsworth.
Yeah.
And he plants. What does he plant? The alfalfa and
food plot stuff.
Food plot stuff.
Yeah.
And he's got some bucks on his trail cam that are massive.
Those trail cams will break your heart.
Oh, I told him that. I said, "Why do you even watch?"
Yeah.
I said, "You're not going to get anywhere near that guy."
No, I got rid of mine. I refuse to look at trail cams anymore.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some monsters, Kenny, in his neck of the woods.
Our season in Minnesota opens on Saturday, and I've got to be honest. I only hear about every third word. I am so obsessed. When people are talking to me and I'm shaking my head going, yeah, sure. I'm actually not listening at all. I am so obsessed with deer hunting.
I've learned.
Yeah, you've learned. Yeah. So, and I only say that because I'm not going to be here next week. Even if I get both of my deer, I think I can get a buck and 2 doe in my area. Even if I get them all by Monday, I'm still not showing up for work. I'm taking the week off. I'm sorry. It's deer hunting week, and I'm taking the week off.
If you don't get one in the freezer, don't even bother coming back.
Right. Yeah, and that's what you said.
Do you still share?
I do if we have enough. The goal is to get 50 pounds of ground.
Yeah.
And then I take another 30 pounds or so to the meat market and have it turned into sausage and brats and whatnot.
You could easily get that out of 2 deer.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think.
Yep, and my son comes up and he has the whole week off, so we make it a long.
Well, so to answer your question, now that I'm not working full time at Channel 5 anymore either, I probably will hit it a few times.
Good.
So ours starts the weekend before Thanksgiving, then goes through Thanksgiving. We only get 10 days. You guys get 14, I think.
Yeah.
And yours is 2 weeks ahead of ours on top of it.
No, we get a week.
1 week only?
Yeah, we go from this Saturday until next Sunday.
I thought you had 14 days for some reason.
And then we can come back and do muzzle loading.
Oh, maybe that's
Thanksgiving.
It.
Yeah.
Because I know ours is 10 days straight through Thanksgiving into that Sunday. And now I'm living right up there with those guys from the deer camp.
Yeah,
so I'll probably go again. I'll probably go out for a couple of days.
I get in that deer stand about 90 minutes before first light, and I'm there until the sun goes down. Just sitting in the woods, watching it wake up, watching the woods. It's so amazing to me. I love it so much.
It is cool, and I can do it. I can't do 7-10 days in a row.
Yeah, I really crave it.
I mean, I totally get it. I do like getting out there as the sun's coming up. I'll never forget the first couple of years, though, Kenny. I thought every rustle behind me, everything I heard in the brush.
That's what's fun.
I was like this.
Squirrel?
Every time it was a squirrel.
Deer?
Every time it was a squirrel.
Yeah.
One time I did have a fox who hung out around the tree for a couple of hours.
That's fun.
Yeah, that was cool. That's the only time I ever saw anything quite like that. I wanted him out of there, though. No deer going to come with him.
Oh, no. Deer and fox are fine.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, they don't. The fox represents no threat.
No threat at all. I just thought they would smell him and go, I ain't going over there. You know, so I didn't. No. So I was trying to get him to shoot, and I was trying to quietly get him not. But it was cool to watch him because what's cool is you're up close, right? But they don't know that they don't even know you're there. So they're just kind of doing their thing.
The fox.
Yeah.
Have fun is what you do. You stand up in your regular voice. You go, well, hello. And they jump about a foot in the air and they're gone.
Okay, next time. That's the only time it happened to me is the one time.
Just say hello. Yeah.
I'll do that because, but I think I might go, 2, 3, because my son wants to come up and do it. So I just told the guys because they asked me last week, Lee and Dan were like, and I looked at them both and I said, you know my rule. If it's too cold, I ain't doing it. I ain't doing it, man.
Don't be so soft.
I'm soft. I don't care. Call me what you want. Doughboy. I don't care. If Kenny, I can watch the sun come up real nice in my windows with a cup of coffee and a heater. You know, I have a cigarette and a coffee, and it looks just as pretty as if I'm in my deer stand.
Jay, don't be a idiot, okay?
I kind of am a idiot at times. I'm just being honest.
Chris, I've had enough.
It can't be too cold in the deer stand. I hate
Bring that music up, Reavers. Jay, thank you. That was a great show today. Good luck next week without me. Whatever you do, I'm sure will be wonderful.
Yeah, good luck in the stand.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for listening to the Krabby Coffee Shop on the Garage Logic Network.
That was a fun one today. We'll see.
Yeah, that was good.
Hey, Garage Logic fans, Mishki here, slipping in ever so briefly to mention that I have a podcast that comes out every Wednesday and every Friday, twice a week now. The show is pretty much about everything you care about and are interested in and need in your life and want to know more about. I tailored the darn thing specifically to your liking. I tailored it to your loves, to your true passions. That took a long time. I'm spent. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely wasted.
I'm Mike King from the podcast Profiling Evil, a place where true crime meets behavioral science. I spent my career investigating serial predators and studying the psychology behind them. Here, we don't just talk about what criminals did, we explore why they do what they do. We expose manipulation and control, look at how offenders select their victims, and uncover the ways that they try to avoid detection. You can find Profiling Evil on your favorite podcast platform.